Today is January the 9th, 2008. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with the Oklahoma State University Library, and we're conducting an oral history project called Women of the Oklahoma Legislature. And today I'm with Miss Helen Arnold in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She served in the House from 1976 to 1982. Is that correct? So thank you for joining me. And let's start by having you tell a little bit about your childhood, where you were born, and then we'll work our way forward.
All right. I was born in Marysville, Kansas, which is a small town. We always said it's a small town south of Lincoln, Nebraska, because it's just 10 miles from the Nebraska line. So, and my mother was born just right outside that, and so she and my grandfather homesteaded in Kansas, in that part of Kansas and so my mother was born there. My father was born in St. Joseph, Missouri, but his grandfather and aunts, a couple of aunts lived there also. So my mother met my father there, and I am the oldest of 3 children. I have 2 brothers younger than I am, and a little town, Marysville was about 3,500 people, so it's a very small town. So I had a lot of freedom that a lot of people do not understand in this day and age. Even in small towns, they don't have as much freedom, I don't think. So we just we grew up doing the things that we liked to do, and we never were told you can't go out in the street or whatever, you know. We used my grandparents lived across the street from us most of the time, and they had a vacant lot. We used to use the street and the vacant lot across the street to play ball or football or whatever we were up to as children. I went to Lincoln School, and that it was built, I think, probably about 10 years before I went there. And we had, in the small town, we had 2 grade schools, and then we had a mixed 8th grade, which was the kids from the 7th grade of Lincoln School and the 7th grade of Central School went to the 8th grade. And they had three classrooms, and that we had 3 or 4 teachers, you know, that kind of went between. We didn't move. We stayed in the same classroom.
How many students then would that have been?
There were probably, I'd say there were, my class was always 18 girls and 6 boys.
Quite a bit outnumbered.
They were, and that was what it was. We had people who would come in and leave, but not very many, you know, because this is during the 30s and the Depression, and people, if they had a job, stayed there, and if they didn't have a job, they probably stayed there with relatives who'd help them out, you know. And but anyway, I think the 8th grade ended up that we had probably about 20 in the classroom. And so.
Did the decibel reach that far up? Probably not.
No. We had, I mean, it was dry, you know. I mean, they didn't have as much rain as they usually had. But the decibel didn't come up. I remember when I was, I think, about 11, that'd been 1938, I think. Why, we were sent home from school one day because they looked out and they saw this greeny red sky, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And so, of course, communication wasn't anything like it is today, you know, and so the sun was kind of greeny and red around it, and all the air was like that. So they sent everybody home from school, and then we found out the next day that it was a dust storm. And so when I later lived in West Texas. I thought they didn't know what dust storms were. But anyway, it was small, and my graduating class was, we had 101 seniors in my graduating class from Marysville High School.
That's a pretty good size.
And that, of course, included all the children who lived on farms around that, within the school district, you know, so we had 10 or 15 children that came in to our high school. And then I grew up in a family that was like what I would consider sort of political. There was always discussion at the table. Now, I didn't include the kids, but there was always discussion about who was doing what in Washington, D.C., or in Topeka, or in Marysville, you know. And that, I think, grew out of that my father was very interested in politics, never was not a politician to go out, but my mother was, my grandfather on my mother's side was the mayor of our small town at one time, and I had great uncles that were in the county, like county treasurer and county assessor. And so I was always around talking about what should be done, what should, you know, and if, I grew up, and I've always had an interest in government and in history. So
What was your favorite subjects in high school?
that, and I loved math, but I never had anyone really explain math to me till after I got out of college. And you know what I mean? I could memorize all these things, but they never told me what I was supposed to reason the math. So, but yes, my favorite subjects were history and government.
Were you in the Girl Scouts?
No, we didn't. We had Girl Scouts, but my father was not much in favor of Girl Scouts.
Well, where did you go to college then?
I went to Kansas State University,
Yes, you did.
which was 55 miles from home. And so their daughter was down there close, and I had relatives that lived in Manhattan, so I couldn't get in too much trouble.
Were you the first in the family? I know you were the oldest, but were you the first in the family then to go to college? Your parents hadn't gone.
Actually, my grandmother on my mother's side of the family had gone down to Friends University in Wichita. Her father was a Christian church minister, and he moved down there with her, and so that she could get 2 years of normal training so she could teach school if she wanted to. And then my great uncle, her brother, graduated from Kansas State.
Well, education was something that was encouraged.
Well, it was, and yet my mother did not get a high school education because she had bad eyes, and they said she was going blind and she should not strain her eyes on finishing. And my father almost died of a ruptured appendix, and he was a junior in high school, and they sent him to California to recuperate with some aunts, and he never finished high school either.
Mm-hmm.
And only of my mother's side of the family, only my aunt finished high school. The boys didn't think that was necessary. I think it's I don't know why that happened that way. Because my grandfather, his parents sent him to Galena, Illinois, I believe it was, to work for a veterinarian so that he could get his high school education. So, you know, and then they had 11 children, and my grandfather, grandmother, and my great-grandmother and grandfather, and my grandfather all, and all these boys and girls came down and homesteaded 60 acres down in Kansas.
Interesting.
And they owned a whole township.
Well, how did you come to pick Kansas State then? Because it was so close?
Yes, that was why. And my father always thought that I'd probably go to Nebraska. He worked for Beatrice Foods, and he thought that he would get a transfer to Lincoln, and then I'd go to the University of Nebraska. And but that didn't work out, and I loved it at Kansas State. Yeah.
What was your major?
And my major was history and government, political science.
I got to do it.
Yes, yes.
So then how did you come to be in Oklahoma?
Well, I married Maurice Arnold, and he is from Marysville also. But he'd been in the service, and he came back, and we lived across the street from each other at Kansas State. So I married him, and he was a geophysicist, and he went to work for what is now BP Amoco. It was then Stanlin Oil and Gas, and we moved to Mississippi, and then we moved to Texas, and then we moved to Colorado, and then he was sent down to the lab at which is now OU's Schusterman Center.
Okay.
Out there. So he worked out there for 20 years.
So you've been in Oklahoma since?
I was just saying, we went out. Well, I guess I better not say that on this. We went out for lunch today. And we were talking about that the first place I ate was this place we went to lunch today in Tulsa. And that was 47 years ago.
And what's the name of the place? You're welcome to say.
Huh?
You said what was the name of the place?
Oh, Brownies. Brownies Hamburgers. And it's on about 22nd and Harvard.
And it's
Mo, he had moved down here, and I was teaching school in Colorado, so I said I would, finish out the school year rather than he'd moved down here in January. And so I finished out the school year there, but on spring break, while I drove down here, and he had an apartment down here, and so he said, well, come down and we'll go out to Brownies and have hamburgers for supper. So I got down here. I was late. I had put the directions of how to get to his apartment in the trunk of the car. But I stopped. I knew the address. I stopped up at Peoria and 21st, and I saw a policeman in the Jewish place there. So I went in and asked, and he said, "You're just a mile off," or 2 miles, I guess it was. So.
That's pretty good. And you drove yourself from Colorado?
Oh yes. My mother always said I should have been born with wheels, because I'm always wanting to go.
I don't think a second about it. I'm just getting the car
Right.
out.
So we moved here. He moved in January 1961, and I moved down in May of 1961.
You got married.
Martin?
And when did you get married?
Oh, we got married in 1948.
Okay.
So we will be married 60 years this year in May.
Hard to believe in some ways, isn't it?
Yes. You don't think about it. When I was looking through this book, and I thought, oh, things are so different now. But so we moved to Tulsa in 48. In 61, and we'd been married 13 years, moved 33 times.
Oh gosh.
and only moved 3 of those times once a year, anyway.
And not just across the county, across state lines.
Yes, yes.
Almost like, or more so than a military.
Yes, it was just about like military. The companies even treated it kind of like military. The boss's wife was your boss, you know.
So you can basically consider Oklahoma your.
We consider that our home now. We have a place that we spend the summer in Colorado. So we consider Oklahoma home.
So when you moved here, what did you do? Did you work?
What did I do? I did this. I think 3 years, like 64, 65. I had a friend who was principal of the Madeline School, Catholic school here, which doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, and so they needed a math and spelling teacher. So she said, Helen, could you do that? And I said, well, yes, I had taken a course in the new math. So and I taught that one year, half a day. But then I didn't do anything. I didn't go have a job or anything. I did a lot of volunteer work, that kind of thing. And so when the ERA was very in the 70s, you know, and so I'd been president of the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma, and we had supported that, and so we couldn't get my representative to vote for it. He said nobody wanted it, yet we saw the stacks, and they were, you know, this many against and this many for, and so I said, I'm going to run against him. Then he didn't do that. There was a vacant Senate seat. Our senator was going to run for governor, so he didn't run, and there's a vacant seat, and I ran.
Did he run against you?
In
your first
election? Yes. I had two people in the primary.
Male, female?
One of each. One male, one female. And the male beat me by, he had, 300 votes more than I had. But she had a lot, we were all fairly close. I came in second, and everybody said, that's a good thing. You go out there and get all those votes for those people who don't like it because he beat her. So anyway, that was and then I won the runoff primary. And then I had a Democrat who was iffy. He didn't know whether he really wanted to run or not, so. And a very nice guy. Nothing wrong with him at all. But he didn't really know how to just get out and campaign. So.
Well, how did you campaign?
I campaigned by walking. I walked the whole district. Knocked on doors before the primary, and I knocked on doors of Republicans, or if they weren't Republicans, I talked to them right then, And but I had a list that said, these people are registered at this house of Republicans, and so.
How'd you get that list?
That list was available at the election board.
And you knew enough to go do that. I'm just trying to figure out strategies that you were smart enough to.
Well, I thought that I thought I should just, what I started out was that we had, I don't know if this is even the law anymore, but you could get on the ballot by petition. If you had 200 people who would sign your petition, you didn't have to pay the $200.
Okay.
But they had to be registered like in your party. So that was, I thought, well, now how am I going to get that? And so we went down and just, I don't think we paid very much for it, but we could get a list of all the registered voters in the district. And and it may have been even that the Republican Party had a list of just Republicans. So I went down and I went around. That's when I first started walking. And that's why I go to the Republicans to get them to. But when I got over to, I had the 200 signatures more, and when I got over to file down in Oklahoma City, they said, "Nah, we don't accept those anymore, and we will just right now tell you there are not enough valid signatures on it. So you got to pay your $200." So I did.
Didn't question it.
Well, I questioned it, but then I did find out when I would go back and check. And we did know enough. I had worked on petitions before and did know enough about that to know, that people don't always tell you the truth when they sign something. And or if you ask them to sign, and then they sign it, and you'd say, "Well, now you're a Republican." "Oh yes, I'm a Republican," and you found out they weren't even registered to vote. Well, yes, they were Republicans, all right. That's how they felt. But, so it was a good thing that they didn't let me go through it, and then somebody challenge it.
That's true.
And I wouldn't have been. I'd have been ineligible to run.
So you had 3 elections, 4 elections, 3, 76, 78, and 80.
Let's see, 76 and 78 and 80, right?
Did they get easier each time?
No. I just avoided having I didn't really have an election in 78. In 78, there was a move in the conservative wing of the Republican Party to get rid of me. So they recruited a person to run against me. And the problem was she didn't move into the district 6 months before filing. And so she was ineligible to run. And she didn't do her homework on that. And of course, I'll have to give the League of Women Voters a lot of credit. I learned about Oklahoma government through the League of Women Voters. I mean, I was voter service chairman here in Tulsa, and then I was president, and then I was president of the state league, and we did a lot of studying election laws and a lot of getting out information to the voters. See, and you learn a lot doing that, and and it was not partisan, but you learned a lot about what you were expected to do in these things, or where to get the information also. So,
did you live there or live here when session was in?
I had an apartment and in Oklahoma City that I lived in on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights. But it was, I just couldn't see living in a hotel room 3 nights, and so I had an apartment where, and if you had something you had to do, well, you could always, you had the apartment there to. In fact, I even let a friend or two, that one friend whose daughter was over there being treated medical, problems at Children's Hospital over there. And she stayed over there even, I think, when maybe we were out of session or something, but she stayed over there a week in the apartment. I wasn't there, but
I think it would be a long commute. Well, not that long, but still, it's time you could use other ways.
well, yes, it wasn't that bad driving back and forth. I mean, I wouldn't do it every day, but after I drove over on Monday morning and came back on Thursday afternoon.
The dome wasn't on the Capitol then, was it? The dome?
Oh, no.
I'd like to have been in it before they put the dome up. And according to my notes, you served with quite a few other women, like Dorothy Connigan
Uh-huh.
and Cleta Dethridge Mitchell.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Cleta
Mhm.
Dethridge,
Helen Cole
Mm-hmm.
and Joan Hastings. She's from here, this area too. Penny Williams. What about Arlene?
Arlene Baker. Mm-hmm. I served with Arlene. And there were 8 of us at one time. And that was when I was thinking about Arlene and Penny and Joan.
And all 3 of those are from this section of this area of the state too, right?
Yeah, they were all from. There were with we had. I was trying to think of who all. This is just the first year. Who all? Maybe there were only 6 of us. I guess there were only 6, not 8.
6 women.
Mm-hmm. From Tulsa County.
From Tulsa, not from the whole state, just from this.
Oh no, but we didn't have a lot of Hannah Atkins and Cleta Dethridge and Dorothy Connigan, and I'm trying to think, Helen Cole. When I was there, there were not as many from Oklahoma County as there were, but then they kind of were in and out too. I was trying to think of one young lady served 1 term with us. Then she was from Oklahoma County. And,
That may have been Judy Swinton.
yes, that's who it was.
I can't find her. She's one of my missing people. I'm not sure where she is.
I have no idea, but and I don't have Jack Kelly's address either. But he was a young freshman, and Judy, he got in contact with me here about a month ago. Said, Helen, I just wanted to find out if you're still alive. And he, they were really young. I mean, he was probably 22 or 3 and I was 48, or 9.
That's young.
So that was young. And, but anyway, I don't know whether he keeps track of other people or not.
I'm going to keep looking. I just haven't been able to find her.
Mm-hmm. She was from Oklahoma City, wasn't she?
I think so.
I think so, too. There were other women that had served in the legislature before we did. But.
Well, in that time period, was it difficult being one of the few women serving? Do you remember if there was any?
I always used to laugh. There were 2 or 3 guys who just thought women ought not to be there at all, And when you're over at the Capitol, on one side is a house parking, and on the other side is Senate parking, And so you have a parking spot over here on the house side. And I would get there. I'd be coming in the morning, and there's 3 guys, and I won't mention their names, but they just didn't think we ought to be there at all. And I'd see them ahead of me, and I'd quick get up behind them so I'd get on the elevator with them. And then I'd say, good morning, And they all, good morning. And then I thought, they've got to learn that there's a place for women and in this house. And they don't need to just be grumpy old men.
Y'all got elected.
Right, just like they did. Well, maybe not quite like they did. I think men campaign differently than women do.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you think they do differently? They probably don't knock on as many doors, do they?
I don't think so. No, I think they depend on their connections. You know, got these friends, and they'll tell 10 other men to vote for me. And women, they have the connections, and women will. And at the time I was there, it was, you know, women thought twice before they got involved in politics, because, you know, that wasn't just the right thing to do. Now, the young women, that was okay, but women my age, middle-aged women, they'd never been involved in politics before. So we couldn't depend, although my connections with my volunteer work, I think, you did have that network of people. Mm-hmm. But I think men do depend on just network of business people and that they will get them elected, and women get out and work at it.
Well, from what I can gather, women had to work harder at getting funded money to
Oh, yes.
harder than men had to.
Yes. I think that once and my experience was with me was that once your family got involved, then your friends got involved, and then it was easier getting money, but we weren't used to getting money in hundreds or $1,000s or anything like that. We just got it in, you know, my first campaign contribution I got for Christmas, a treasure chest, a tin thing that my nieces and nephews and their friends had bought and taken up a collection, and there was $43 in it. And I just thought that was wonderful, but they would send me that money to run for office.
Did you keep the chest?
Yes, I've still got the chest.
Sentimental things. Well, once you got there, well, let's back up.
Yes. All right.
Election night. Do you remember much about
election night?
Mm-hmm.
We had, what do I want to say? What we didn't, for the primary, well, we had people, I was still walking all day on election day, you know, walking different neighborhoods. And then people were calling right behind me to say, you know, we would like for you to go out and vote for Helen Arnold. And so then we had pizza and Coke or Pepsi or whatever it was, something to drink at the election headquarters waiting for the returns. But we had people who went out to all the precincts and got the election returns. So we knew, you know, and we knew we had not one that come in second in the primary, but that we had enough votes that they had to have a runoff primary. So, and we did the same thing when they had the runoff primary.
And then your swearing in day?
Yes, we took a bus. All my supporters. And we went over there. Kids and everybody who, you know, came with their parents down to the headquarters and done some little thing or went out and passed out brochures someplace. And so we took a bus. We had 47 people who went on the bus with us and for the swearing in. And we had a good time.
Well, do you remember the first time you presented a bill on the floor?
I don't think yet. No, I don't. I think that I only had one bill that I was the author of, I mean, you know, that,
The name.
well, and I suppose the same way now, Republicans are in charge and Democrats don't get any rights to put their name on bills. But, you know, that then Democrats didn't let Republicans have their name as the author of a bill. If they liked the bill, why somebody else got their name on it.
That's not quite fair, does it?
Oh, well, it wasn't, but then, you know, if you want to get something done, well, you don't have to be the author particularly. I mean, the chief author,
Sure.
you know, and so. And a lot of times, if you had an idea, you went to a Democrat and asked them to do it because it had a better chance of passing. And if that's what you wanted to do. But my one bill was a nurse midwife bill. And I had two women came over and started lobbying me about having nurse midwives, which are nurses who work with doctors to for, you know, to have birthing done. They do most of all the dietary and all of this stuff, and then if everything goes okay, they even are there when the baby's born, and doctors are off someplace else on call. And I met two young women that I just admired a lot, and there's a school for nurse midwives, and you can get your degree from there, but you have to have every so many years you have to have attended, you know, or been the midwife for somebody to. And these young women went to Guatemala to get their number of births that they needed, and they wanted to have the right to do that in the United States. In Oklahoma. There were other places, but then you had to be associated with a doctor, and you couldn't do that in Oklahoma at the time.
So how hard was that to get passed?
Really wasn't very hard at all. Steve Wolf, I don't know if you, but anyway, he was a senator from here, and his wife's sister was a nurse midwife in Florida. And so he was interested in this bill, so between the two of us, we got the bill passed. And we were both Republicans, so it was a miracle probably. But I don't remember and I'll tell you what my secretary over at the Capitol used to say. Helen is the amendment queen of the legislature. That's the way I found that I could change legislation, or I could get what I wanted in, was just to write amendments on the floor. And quite a few of those passed. And, so there's always a way if there's a will.
Did you have that same assistant the entire time you were there?
Same secretary? Yes, I had the same secretary the entire time I was there.
So your office was in the same spot the entire time?
Yes, it was. And they had a Republican hallway at that time, and so Republicans and were down the north hallway off of the legislative chamber, after the House chamber, and we were on the 4th floor, and I used to laugh when I got my assignment for my room where I was going to have my office. It said, I think it was 405.5. And I thought, oh my, I'm going to be back in a closet someplace. But it was just that I don't know why that room happened to get a half on it. But anyway, I I was fortunate that I had good office mates.
Well,
Not that I agreed with them. One of them was from here, and one of them was from Bartlesville. And and we had the same secretary all the time over there, but no assistants.
In those days, you had to read as many bills as they seem to read now.
Read them all.
Stacks and stacks.
Yeah, I'll read them all. It takes you a while to find out what you have to read in them, because see, a bill will just have a change in the bill. And I was reading the whole bill for a long time, and then I found out, well, that dark printing is all I have to read, because that's what they're changing in this legislation. But nobody tells you those
I was
things.
going to say, did you have someone to tell you the shortcuts? Or
No. They just want the freshmen to make fools of themselves out there.
Well, did they have a mouth of the house back then too? And whoever talked the most as a freshman, they'd call them mouth of the house.
Yes. I shared that honor with Cleta Deathridge.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
I didn't know that, Arwen.
Right. My name's on that plaque.
That's good too, though. I mean,
That's what you get for asking questions,
mhm.
or making amendments, or doing things,
Cleta's interesting. I interviewed her back in the summer.
Oh, did you? Was she in Oklahoma?
D.C. She's in Washington, D.C.
I know, but was she?
No, I was there for a conference.
Very good.
Managed to get in to see
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
And I don't know if I asked her if she was the mouth of the house, but I can see that she might have that potential.
Yes. And that I don't know why they had two women that year, but that was Cleta and I shared that.
It's interesting that they choose women instead of men in some cases like that. I guess I need to go back and look and see what the percentage is of women versus men that get that award.
Yes, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. Go ahead and look at that.
Just a curiosity.
I haven't seen it for quite a while. I just know no one over there anymore, so.
When was the last time you were in the Capitol then?
Oh, in the Capitol? I was over there 3 years ago. I went over to, have a meeting. I think that's what it's called. It's the voting, it's the voting thing about voting. I'm trying to think of what those initials stand for. But it's where they were going to buy voting machines for everybody, to have. The federal government trying to sort of, I think, equalize voting rights, every place. So.
And I can imagine, I try, when I walk in the doors, I try to imagine what some of you must have felt, back in the 70s or even earlier, what it must have been like to walk those halls. You get goosebumps just thinking of that.
Well, it was a very exciting experience.
Especially during the ERA. I mean, that was a lot of debate when you were there too. Well, maybe it was a little bit after. The debate was in the early 70s, right? And you came in 76. So that had already been worked.
Well, they had, it was still there, but everybody had changed their position. And see, at the time the first debate, and we went over there, I remember the league went over and testified for the ERA. And Spearman, have you heard of him?
Mhm.
He was from Edmond. And he was just adamantly against the ERA. And after we testified, he changed his mind. But at the same time, Jim Inhofe was for the ERA, and when they got ready for the first vote, he changed his mind. I mean, so there was no rhyme or reason. It was just sort of like somebody got to him, you know. I mean, some person they knew said, "Oh, this is a bad idea. Forget it," you know, or "This is a good idea. You ought to change your mind." But that was it was an exciting time because the first committee assignments I got were they gave me education. All women were on the education committee. Then I was on public safety and penal affairs committee. And I was on city, county government. I've forgotten what the other one was. But we had 4 committee assignments. But they put women on the city, county government because the guy who ran it just hated women in that. And he was so mean to all of us. He'd never let us ask a question at the committee meeting. He'd never let us ask if we could amend it, you know. Nothing. You just sat there, you know. And I don't know if I never did figure out whether he ever changed his mind about women or not, but he just did not like it.
Were the other chairs like that?
No, but like the public safety and penal affairs, that one was run by David Riggs. I mean, he was the chair of that. And he was very fair and very good to work with. And I'd known him quite a while. I mean, since I'd been in Tulsa. I've not known him intimately or anything, but knew who he was and he knew who I was, that kind of thing. And but what was revealing about that was that the senator who was head of that committee, you know, he was lock them up and throw away the key. And after 2 years, and he'd been that way for years and years and years, he's from Sapulpa. And after 2 years, he decided that was not the way to take care of, you know, that we were getting so many prisoners and no place to put them, and, you know, and so John Young was his name. I just admired him for that, you know, because he listened and heard and saw what was going on around the country. And, you know, about locking up everybody who'd done any minor infraction of any law, you know, almost. And so he changed his mind and started working with trying to rehabilitate people who were.
That's about the time the Rehabilitation Services Office was probably started.
Yes, it was. And I think that he could see why that we should just be throwing away all these young men and women that we were incarcerating and just locking them up and leaving them there till the sentence was through.
Well, you didn't get to pick your committees, they picked them for you?
That's right. The speaker
assigned you.
That speaker assigned you to the. Now, after the first 2 years, then I think you were given an opportunity to say if you'd like to be on a committee or not. I mean, maybe not all the committees, but one committee you particularly like to be on.
Rank them or something? If you could choose one, which one would it be, type thing that you ran?
Yes. And then depending on if the speaker liked you or didn't like you, or thought he could work with you or didn't think he could work with you, whether you got that assignment or not.
Well, the mouth of the house might have had something to say.
Well, yeah. See, we had, let's see, did I have, Bill Willis was the speaker, and then Dan, I'm from Stillwater.
Oh, I should know, but I probably don't.
I will, I'll think of it in a minute. It's a senior moment. But he was speaker, and I think both of them were fairly fair, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Willis was a little more old-fashioned, and but I know that the others,
Well, one of the other, I think must have been in the House, had to be in the House, was Monks.
John Monks.
Yeah, I've heard various stories. His name has come up, and it was quite a character, it seems.
Yes, he's from Muskogee.
We don't need to say.
Huh?
We don't need to say any more than that. That's one name that has
Yes.
popped up in several.
Well, yeah, John Monks. Well, I don't know what you say about John. He was I think his main thing was he's a super patriot. He belonged to the National Guard, you know, and he went off for 2 weeks on the war games but as far as I never had a lot of things to do with John Monks. He was against the ERA, even though his wife said if he didn't vote for it, she was going to kick him out of the house. I heard that. That may not be true, but anyway. He was just John Monks, I guess. He never bothered me, so.
Well, do you recall anything specific about Aline Baker? I haven't, she's deceased now, so I haven't had anyone say much about her.
Aline Baker was just a wonderful woman. She was a person, I guess I really should say. Shouldn't qualify that as woman, but she was a wonderful person. She was very interested in people, and she was very interested in libraries and education and that kind of thing. She lived in Turley, up north there,
Okay.
And her husband had a garage, but she had a son was the fire chief in Tulsa, and I'm not sure. I think he was in the legislature, but no, it was the city council. Anyway, after he retired. But Aline was she just did lots of things for lots of people, and she was a very, very conscientious representative for what we'd call North Tulsa, but in Turley. And she just became a friend, you know, just right away. We had a lot in common, and as far as she'd grown up in a little town, and she was a wonderful, wonderful woman.
When you were both out of the house, did you stay in touch some?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, they're always, you probably see, not anymore. I mean, I've been out so long, but you always would see. You'd see house members and people. You have some connection through something you're doing, probably, always. I mean,
Well, it's nice to, just forget them when you walk out the door.
Oh, no, 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 no. In fact, I saw Cleta in Washington, D.C. one time. And we were all up at the Capitol, and that was about 13, 14 years ago, I guess. And dedicating a woman's exhibit up there.
And switch tape before I ask my next question. Well, after you got out of the house, what did you do next?
I got out of the house and I went down to some function downtown, and Roger Randall was there, and he looked at me and he said, Helen, would you like to be a tag agent? And I said, I'll have to think about that one. And it was when you weren't here then, but there was a big scandal over one of the state senators. Maybe he was an ex-senator by then. No, I think he was still state senator. And his wife had a tag agency. And there was a big about how she spent the money. She didn't do anything illegal, but they didn't like it because she owned all this equipment and all that she could sell to the next tag agent if she wasn't the tag agent any longer, Mm-hmm. And there's always those people who want to make some big deal out of it. So I thought it over, and I went over to the Capitol, and I said, and that was about a year and a half, I guess, after and so I said, well, Roger, what do you expect of me, And Roger and I had been friends for a long time. He said, well, I expect that you and I will not have a public outing of our differences. And I said, by that you mean I won't say anything bad about you and you won't say anything bad about me? And he said, right. He said, I just don't think we need to air any differences we have, by calling the press. And I said, well, that's how I felt about it. So he had me appointed a tag agent. And, so that's what I did for,
how long?
let's see, that was 1984. And then when Henry Bellman ran for governor in 86, I went to him and said, I want to be on the tax commission after I'd been a tag agent for a while. I said, I want to be on the tax commission. He said, Helen, they'll never put a Republican on the tax commission. And so I said, okay. I said, I talked to David Riggs. I think he was my senator then. They changed the district a little after that. And said, and he said that he would support my appointment. And so then after Henry Bellman, and that was the end of it, And so after Henry Bellman got elected governor, I guess it was Linda, called me and said, Helen, the governor would like to talk to you. And that was in January after he'd been I guess it was the week before he was inaugurated. So he asked me to come on his cabinet and be the director of the Office of Public Affairs, which is the Department of Central Services now.
You would have been in your late 50s then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you did that until you retired.
I was just let's see, the next year I was 60. And so,
And how long did you get to do that then?
well, until he
Got out.
he didn't run the next time. And so I did that 3.5 years. And it was interesting. But, is it hard?
Really?
I mean, it's hard. Especially if you have like a Republican governor and you have the House and Senate are Democrat, and you have all of these bureaucrats, and I was one of them, that were always, well, I want you to get the governor to appoint me, a Democratic, and I wasn't one of those then. But anyway, they all are over there trying to get appointed to better jobs and things, and particularly when the Senate has to confirm them, and so it's really hard to know what's going on, and that was a big job. I mean, there are lots and lots of people in the Office of Public Affairs because they ran all the state office buildings. They ran the state capitol. They ran the motor pool. They ran everything. See, and so you had employees all over the state. You didn't know who was doing what. I mean, you had, but not one reason, because you never got to appoint anybody except just the people in the office. Everybody else had their job, and it was by the legislatures. And so there just was that was a very, very big job. And it's much better if you have Republicans doing Republicans and Democrats doing Democrats. Just get rid of if you're a Democrat, get rid of all the Republicans, and Republicans get rid of all the Democrats, and just, and then you've got cohesion and people doing what you think needs to be done. So
Did you have to live in Oklahoma City when you did that?
I had an apartment in Oklahoma City. Like Mo said, he would come over if I needed a date. That I would go over either Sunday night or Monday morning to Oklahoma City and spend the week there and come back on Friday.
You did that for 3 years.
I did that for 3.5 years, yeah. Well, it wasn't too bad. I mean, we don't have any children, so we didn't have any family conflicts. Anytime he could come, anytime.
Right.
And
he had to learn to cook for himself, huh?
Yeah.
Open a can of beans.
Yeah. TV dinner. Sometimes I would do some cooking on the weekend so he could. And then he loves Colorado, and so he'd spend summers in Colorado. So
What did he do for his career? What was his main career? Oh, you said
geophysicist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that would keep him busy too, I'd say.
And so but he didn't. Let's see. He retired in 1980. So
before you started.
Before I went over to the Capitol, yeah. So he could come over there anytime he wanted to, and did a lot. Sometimes we'd spend the weekend over there rather than in Tulsa. And
if you had to pick out one memory of that time period, can you?
You mean
when you were serving in the house? Any favorite one, or one that just pops up and says, "This is funny," or not? Or
I think when I think of serving in the legislature, I remember when Frank Sheridan kept introducing this bill to castrate all sex offenders.
Okay.
And so one day Hannah Atkins came to me and said, Helen, Cleta and I are going to present Frank Sheridan a sword so he can castrate all. So we did on the house floor. She had this sword, all this fancy cardboard sword, presented to Frank. He was good. I mean, it wasn't,
Good humor.
yeah, it was all done in fun, but
I guess you have to have some light moments because there's a lot of serious ones
yes,
on the floor.
yes. Some things that you do. I think about also about all this about the death by injection, and that was passed the first session, and I think David Riggs and I were the ones who voted against it. I'm not sure. I know that Bill Wiseman and I talked about it, and I'm against the death penalty. And so I didn't think any. And he said, but this would be much more humane than the way they're doing it now with, the electric chair and having everybody there, families having to go through that, And but anyway, I think that I voted against that. But it wasn't because I was for having electrocuting. But it was because I'm not for the death penalty. Period. And so I never really had to do anything about that. I mean, because there was never a bill to eliminate the death penalty in Oklahoma then.
Some states are beginning to do that, though.
Huh?
Some states have, I think.
Yes, because they know they've got a lot of innocent people on death row. And I don't think Project Innocence has gotten to Oklahoma yet, but that's when the governors change their mind, I think, is when they find out that people are given the death penalty that for no reason but maybe their color or their sex or whatever. And but I, as far as serious, I think that I don't think that I ever felt that we really accomplished a great deal as far as something that really stands out in my mind in the legislature. I mean, it was sort of a day-to-day, you just do this job and you read the bills and you try to find out what they really are meaning by them and that kind of thing. But I think one of the best things that happened while I was in the governor's cabinet was when they passed the education bill. And what was it, 1019 they talk about it all the time now, but it's been 15 years since it was passed almost. And more than that, I guess, 90. So it's 18 years.
I mean, amended since then, I guess.
Oh, I think so. Although I don't think that the part of it that let public school teachers, be really well qualified to teach, and compensating them supposedly for that. But I don't think the part about giving them the opportunity for in-service training and further education and that kind of thing. I don't think that's been amended much.
They still do something.
Yeah.
Let me check my notes real quick. I think I need to ask. Oh, if a woman came up to you and asked for your advice whether she should run or not, get involved in not, or let's do run for public office, what would you tell her?
I'd say go for it. I think that women need to look at, and I'm sure men do this, I think anybody who's going to run really needs to look at where do you live, what is the demographics, what is your party, what is your philosophy about, and know your constituency before you get into that. I mean, if you think, well, I'd like to be a public, I'd like to be in the legislature, then I think you need to look maybe 2 years ahead of time and look at where would I fit best? Who would I represent? What area would I represent the best? And I didn't do that, but I did know that I was in a Republican district and I was a Republican. And but I just think that if more women don't run, then we can't change anything. I mean, women need to be part of this. They need to be at least half of this democracy. Or this republic.
I don't know if we ever will be, though, in the elected offices. It'll take a lot longer than we've done.
I think so. I think, I told them that there would be fewer. I don't know how many women are in the legislature now.
19.
19?
Okay,
that's
total.
There were only 11 when we were there. I mean, that was the highest number when I was there.
Yeah, the most at any one time that I figured out was 24.
There were 24 at one time?
And that's nowhere near half.
Oh, no. And but I just think women have got to learn to take more risk than they're taking, and they need to do it with intelligence. I mean, not that they have to be smart. I mean, they need to be smart politically. That's why I said I think they all have to look at where they're living. Look at what, and even like I did, I never would have beat the guy that was the incumbent if he'd run, and I lucked out on that. And
I don't know if it was luck.
Huh?
I'm not sure it was luck.
Sure, a lot of that is, but also you have to go at it realistically.
What are your thoughts on the term limits?
I think it's a big mistake. Big mistake. And they've got them other places, the term limits, and just a big error. They have no institutional memory. 6 years of institutional memory, or what is it, 12 for Senate? 6 for the House, is it? Or is it 12 for the House too?
I think it's 12 for the House too.
No, I disagreed with Governor Bellman when he proposed that, or even liked it when somebody else proposed it. And I said, no. I said, you may think that eventually, you'll get a lot of Republicans in there, but I don't think they're going to be the Republicans you would want to be in there.
Well, you just learn it, then you leave. You just learn.
That's right. Well, you could have some good years, but then why not use all of this? I mean, why not? I think that it seems to me that if people want to serve and have done well serving, then let them. Why force them out?
The voters can take care of it if they.
That's right. That's what I think. The voters, every place but, I think every place but the big cities know that. They would like to keep their representatives. Big cities, so maybe we ought to have some kind of law that says only the Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Only those cities of 300,000 or more. Well, their legislators will have term limits.
Any thoughts on running again?
No. No. I did run, one other time for city commission here, and when they were for the finance commissioner, and I got beat by a Republican in a Republican primary. But since then, I just really haven't had any. I could not do what I think most Republicans do now, and that is absolutely, I don't care if you're the governor and you're a crook, I will vote the way the governor tells me to vote, or I will vote the way the party tells me to vote, regardless. I just don't think I don't think most people are really that loyal. If they're smart, they aren't. They take the best of everything they can get. So I just feel I wouldn't be comfortable with that kind of.
Are you involved in anything that's political at the moment? Do you do volunteer work?
Just shout at the TV. And all these primaries and everything, all the people are saying and not saying.
Well, my only comment on that is John McClain should not have. That's not right. It's not John. It's John, isn't it? McCain should not have read his statement last night.
Did he?
He read it. He looked down and read the whole.
Oh no.
No energy. No. It was not good.
No, I don't think so either. I didn't know it. I didn't watch that, and I didn't watch any of them. I thought, what bothers me is, I can't stand those media people who are interpreting every vote. Every vote and everything, and anybody that says anything.
Exit polls are not good. I think they should not be able to say those exit polls when they start doing those.
I think that people are lying to them, is what I think. Well, that's why those exit polls are like they are. Come out of there, who did you vote for? Oh, I voted for, and they think of the worst one,
I thought that way.
I think that's what they were finding out about polling people before the election, saying, who are you going to vote for? And I think that's an error. I think people really don't want, that's just like, who did you vote for? I mean, coming out of the exit poll, well, it's not any of your business who I voted for, huh? You'll find that out when I find it out. If I won or didn't win. But now, did we stray off of that thing? What did you ask me?
No, I was asking if you want to run again.
Oh, no.
Or if you were doing anything with politics.
No, I haven't done anything with politics since I left with the governor.
Well, it looks like all of my questions do it. Is there anything you want to add before I ask my last one?
No, I do want to say about women running that it's a wonderful experience. You do have to have your family's backing. You have to have at least them not being against you doing this thing. I think you do, unless you're ready to get a divorce or something. But there's no experience like a political experience. I think that people just have to just get out there and take that risk, particularly women, because they need to. And if we got 24 women, that's twice as many as were in when I was in there at the highest level. And that means in the next 35 years, we ought to have 50 women out of the 101.
We should, and they'll have to figure out child care and other things maybe to get more women to run. I don't know.
Well, that's about like saying child care and other things to get more women to go to work. I mean, if you have to work, well, you figure out a way. And if you have the desire to be in politics, figure out a way. I mean, I would be for them having a school or a nursery or whatever at the Capitol. I'm not against that. Where women could drop off their children.
Well, the same thing can be said about men who run. It doesn't seem to be a big...
Yeah, they can drop off their children too, huh?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a deciding factor for them when it comes time to decide to run or not.
And I think that's, you'll have to forgive me if I don't think of those things, because I didn't grow up in the era where, that men might take that responsibility. I believe they should, but I didn't grow up in an era when they. I thought by now they would have, but we've gone backwards as far as I'm concerned.
In a lot of ways we have.
Mm-hmm. And one thing, they've used women to lower men's wages, I think.
Instead of raising.
And so instead of raising women's wages, why they've used women to fill in those jobs so they don't have to pay men more.
Could be.
And so I think that was a backward step. But I don't know how you do any of that. Reconcile any of the things that go on that cause families not to have enough money to live, to eat and have shelter, become homeless. And you think you solved it, and then somebody comes up with some other grand scheme that...
Every 8 years it changes, huh?
Huh?
Every 8 years it changes, huh?
Well, yes. Or maybe every 4. Who knows?
Okay. Well, that's quick. Well, my last question then is, this is a tough one, so think about it a little bit. When history is written about you, what would you like for it to say?
I would like for it to say that I was a thoughtful legislator and that I did not hesitate to ask questions.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Well, thank you very much for
Yes.
sharing your
Thank
story.
you.
It's been
Thank you.
fun and a pleasure.